So I'm going to build a demo around a bunch of files that have similar data and then try to add some files that have not so similar data. So what do we do? And the reason I'm looking at this as similar data is in similar data, things that have, like for instance, this beneficiary designation form, or this could be a account opening form or an account transfer form. They might have a lot of different layouts, but they basically have the same thing. They have a name, they have a social security number, they have a date of birth, and they might have an account number. So I can get that data off depending on, let's skip ahead, a bunch of these are the same, but when I get to this one, it has a different layout. So what do I do when that layout changes? And do I have to have IT come back and create a fingerprint every time? The answer is no. I can build these learning applications, but from there, when in the learning application, it has the kind of built-in that it expects that type of file. So what do I do when I start receiving other kinds of documents like a tax form in that same mix? There's a couple different ways to go about that, but we're going to end up creating a gateway application that will take just kind of identify type on the application and then deliver it to the correct application. So that's what we're going to do here. There's ways of doing it in the learning template as well. You can't have more than one main document. We're talking about main documents in the learning template. You can't have more than one main document, but you got to have a better page ID system there that you're filtering. Typically something like Flex, or a much smarter Flex for doing some of the manual processes, and before that a much smarter system of identifying document type and trying to put them in the proper buckets before it gets to the learning part of the application. So let's get started. I have Datacap Studio here, and I'm going to create a new application with the template. Let me do one check real quick. Okay, so I did a check. I ran Datacap Application Manager. I loaded the learning template. This is a problem I found in a couple of, maybe it might just be my image, but I thought this was fixed. I think it's going to be fixed in a later image. Jet, or Ace. Ace will not work in this somehow. Either my templates got confused or somebody else's did, and Ace will not work. It has to be Jet when I'm looking at the Datacap templates that I'm using. So I'm just going to change that real quick to Jet. Pretty simple change. If I don't, then the wizard, the Datacap Studio wizard, will fail. And that's it. So those two got to change. I think the rest of them are okay. The rest of them are Jet, and there's one more. There's an export, fingerprint image, export. Export's not really used. It's not even set here in this one. And that's it. I don't think there's any others. So those two just need to be Jet. I'm going to save those changes. I'm going to quit out of this. I'm going to run the wizard. I'm going to create a new application. I'm going to give the application a name. I'm going to call this accounts, and I'm going to use not the form template, the learning template on this one, and click next. And the rest of it is setting up the DCO. I don't really care that much. I mean, I'm going to do some work on this, but I'm going to change that and say finish here. I'm going to close the application. I'm going to close the wizard, and then I'm going to open my application. It's called accounts. So the learning template has main page, trailing page, attachment, separator. Everything needs to be identified as a main page. If a PDF comes in, we're going to take the top of it, the first page, make it a main page. The rest of them are going to be trailing. Same thing with a multi-page TIFF. Other pages we're going to do some fingerprinting on. Decide if they're multi-pages and they're coming in as single TIFFs, we're going to have to do a little bunch of extra work. So we kind of have to have some identification up front of which ones are main pages and which ones are trailing. For that, now we have to go and build in what fields we need to get off of this document. In this case, there are a bunch of fields directly in the application already. Index field 1, and we could just rename this as a sample field, and I can lock this and call it full name. Okay, and I'm going to create more fields here, and I'm going to create 3 of them, and I'm going to call this date of birth, SSN, and account number. I'm going to move the add fingerprint one down, the routing instructions down, and the fingerprint class. So in this case, we are going to build out our doc types as fingerprint classes. Each class is going to have a different doc type in here. In this case, for these, that's if I wanted to know which company it was coming from, things like that. If I wanted to have a further sort within this kind of page layout. This comes from the invoicing system, where I have the fingerprint class here is actually the company name that the invoice is coming from. In this case, I don't think I'm really going to use that much. They're all going to be very similar, but I'm going to have a different fingerprint for each kind of layout. Let's save that, and let's make sure that I know that there are some actions based on this. We're going to populate the fields, and we're going to validate the field at the rule level. So each of these fields, and these new ones I just created, don't have that, so there's not going to be any location or validation based on that. In the newer systems, I can also click on the rule itself, and let's just go see the locate rule here. See where it's attached. Remember, there's different ways of attaching, two different ways of attaching. In this learning application, it uses the old system where the rules are attached directly to the actual field open or the field close or the page open or the page close. Save that and finish that up here. Now next up, let's go look at those documents again. So here is my document. Oh, I have one more thing. I want to know what this I'm going to try to do a checkbox as well, and we have this irrevocable beneficiary, and I'm just going to create a field called irrevocable and have that go with it. Now in the verify step, when you create the fingerprints, there's no way to really do the checkbox zones, so we'd have to have somebody come back through and do that manually. So we'd have to make that a step up front and do that, but let's just go through and look and see what that looks like. This one might take a little more work because I'm not using the Datacap FastDoc application, which has a lot of nice stuff in it for doing this. I might have to build those rules out in a little more rule-centered way versus using the UI elements. We'll see. So one more field, and irrevocable. I might go back. Actually, I'm going to delete that. Let me show you that I do this sometimes. I think it will be easier if I do that in Datacap FastDoc. So let's delete that field. Say yes, say yes. I'm going to save it. I'm going to exit. I'm going to exit the whole app and go back to Datacap FastDoc. FastDoc admin, so I have the admin capability to add things. It's got a nicer interface for adding those checkbox fields. So I'm going to add a field to main page called irrevocable, and I just say add. There's the field there. When I go and I set up this field, this is where I've got some more capability. Let me see what rules I got here. I gotta save this, yes. Recognize pages. Okay, so this one I do have. I'm going to double click that, and yeah, I do have one that's going to recognize those. So this will set up those rules nicely and do a lot of the work for me. So yes, I'm going to save the changes. And this one, I'm going to click on irrevocable. The settings on this are going to be, it's going to have multiple values. I'm just going to add a value here called yes, the value of 1, and display text is yes. I'm going to add another one here. The value is, oh, this is going to be optical mark. That's where I'm doing that. So I set this as optical mark. I'm going to say add, and then when I click add, you can see it adds a sub field to this. The value is going to be 1. Display text is going to be yes. I'm going to add another one called 0 and no. So when I started adding those fields, it wasn't adding these. When I started adding the values here, it wasn't adding the subfield, so I knew that I hadn't chosen optical mark. That's how I knew that. That looks right. Now let's set that up, and we may have to copy that into a different kind of action if I don't want to use the UI, but I'm just going to use it on this one. I'm going to say I'm going to read this field. I'm going to tell it to read checkboxes, and in this case I'm going to say it's a square box because it's square box. I'm going to save that. Now that's set up the rules to connect that rule set to this checkbox. So that's going to save me a ton of work. I might go through and rework those rules and make them less UI, but that's going to save me a ton of work right there. So one reason why I would switch out of Datacap Studio to Datacap FastDoc would be that right there. I'm going to close that, come back to Datacap Studio, and here's my application and my document and my main page. Alright, so let's look at that image. So are there some ways that I can do to find this data? I can look for the word employee name look to the right and see if there's some text that's a name, or look down. Social Security number is probably an easy one because I can check the format of it. I can look for the word Social Security. I can look to the right next to it and try to find a number, or look down, things like that. So these are some of those pre-loading capabilities that I can do, where in most cases I'm going to make my operator choose the locations and find the data. They just know they're finding the data, but what they don't know is they're building the capability of the next time the document comes in, they're going to be able, it's going to automatically get that data. But we can kind of pre-help them find that data by doing some text searching around on this document as well. And the way I'm going to do that is I'm going to add a locate rule. You can see there's already one on the full name, a locate populate field, and I'm going to do a locate. Oh, actually this is the right thing. We're going to have to take this one and put it in all of these other fields, because this is the populate, another piece of it. Forgot about that. I need to do that locate populate field on each of these. And they might have their own custom ones as well, but full name has it. Date of birth does not. This is where you're going to have to put these in, so when the OCR runs, it's going to actually populate the data with what's in the zone. So there's that. Irrevocable, this one already has, there's this recognize rule. This one probably already has its own rule. Recognize irrevocable, you can see here it's connected. Again, there's two ways of connecting these up. This one's going to run on type irrevocable, so that's fine. We've got that. Let's make sure that's going to run in the profiler step. And there's recognize pages in the field, so it's already going to run. That's good. We've got that built in. So kind of going two different ways about going about this. The next step is this lookup using a locate rule. Let's see where they've got any locate rules populated here. Okay, yeah, so the base level locate rule is just going to populate by a zone. So I can do specialized locate rules. In this case, I'm going to do a new locate rule, and I'm going to call this locate and populate SSN. Okay, I'm going to do the F find SSN down. And what's going to happen is, and this is where I'm going to look something up so you can just see exactly how I would go about this. I know they do this already in AP, so I'm going to go look up how they do this. In AP, and a lot of times I have to have a sample, I can open up another copy of Datacap Studio, and I know they have these locate rules here. It's a very similar application. Let's find one that I know has a lookup, and that's the invoice total. So they do have a locate rule on the invoice total. Here's the locate rule, and here's the invoice total. So they've done that same thing where they've expanded out this locate, and this locate invoice total has more actions in it. So they're going to do some keyword searching. They're going to look for the total due, look to the right, is it a currency, update the field. Otherwise it's going to fail and drop into one of these and update the field. The other thing is that at the end, if they don't find it, they're going to try to populate the zone. I could do something like this as well and just put that at the beginning and say is field value filled? If not, drop into the other one. So we could do it a couple different ways, but that's what they're doing. I'm just going to do word find because it's a little easier. I don't have to build the whole key list to find the word social security, I think. Let's look. Yep, social security. So locate has the rules. One of them is word find, really easy to use. But if you want a list of word finds, then you use that find key list. Probably more than likely you would use that because you're going to have a bunch of different names here. Social Security. Now I'm going to go down a word, down line. So some of these have been deprecated. I got to remember which one it is. So I'm just going to say, yeah, go down line. I'm going to go down one, update the field, and we could do some checks in there to see if it's a number or not, a social security number. Use a regular expression of some sort. And update field. So if it finds the word social security number, it's going to go down a line and it's going to update that field. And that's going to use the zone that's found by this moving down from the location where it found social security number. Update field. Now there's only one word here because they're all mixed together. If I had 4 words, I can group them together. If there's bigger space in between some of the characters, like you've got some blocking going on where the person has to write the number, then you have to use a group by, and it'll group the words together based on how many spaces are between them, a maximum number of spaces in between the word. And that's just based on average character height, things like that. That's how I do my locate rule. I put a bunch more in here to do, make sure it's not filled, I'd probably do, if there already is a zone, I'd populate the zone first in another function. I need that zone work too. So I'm just going to take this function right here, I'm going to copy it, and I'm going to paste it here. Go like that. I'm going to give it a good name, F fill SSN by zone. And I give it good names here, so if I have to look in the log, I can find it easily. The function names are the easiest ones to find. Function names and action names are the easiest ones to find in the logs. Populate field by zone, and let's just say I want to make sure that if there's no zone that I do this next action. And there's the validations. Where the validations come in is I can say is field filled. So if it's filled, it'll be true, and then it will stop there. If it's not, it's going to drop into this other word, other action here. So remember, functions go in order. Once this action is executed, connected to a specific field, page, or doc, or batch, once it runs, it'll run the first function until it succeeds, or if there's something that returns false, it'll drop to the next function until one of the functions succeeds. I could have 12 of them here cascading down doing different things. Very similar to, we can do page IDs like this, where I'm trying different kinds of page ID types, where I try fingerprint, and then I try content classification, and then I try some regular expressions, and then I try some barcodes in any order and cascade through them like that. Very similar. This rule has not yet, the one problem is this rule has not yet been connected to our account number. I'm using the generic one. I'm going to remove that, and I'm going to connect this one to it. So now this one has his specialized, make these a little smaller, bigger so I can see that. This one has his specialized locate and populate Social Security number, where the rest of them have a generic that's going to go by zone. If there's no zone, meaning there's no fingerprint, it's going to take, the operator's going to have to go find it, it's going to save that zone, it's going to create a new fingerprint on export, and then it's going to, the next time that document layout comes through, it's going to recognize it. And what was the other action I had here on this original? So it's validating the field rule. Let's see what that looks like. I can click on one of these buttons to look at that rule, and if it's filled, otherwise it's going to add an error message. So I can validate here. If it's not filled, it's going to invalidate this field and force the user to put something in, which I should probably do something like that on the rest of them. I'll just do that. I'll add that action on there just to make sure the validation is done. So this page, when the fingerprint isn't found, what's going to happen is each of these fields is going to be given a specific status, probably -1, that will tell the viewer, the verified viewer, that the field needs to be verified. Otherwise it's not. It's going to have a field status of 0, which means just, hey, ignore it, but I need to have that here. I'm probably going to do a different one. I'd probably do a more specialized one for each of these, but for now let's just add them to this. So there is some kind of verify. In this case we would verify that the Social Security number has the correct layout using some kind of a regular expression to verify that the Social Security number is a valid Social Security number. So I've got those locate rules, so I've got that going. I'm pretty sure I'm ready to start running some data through this. So that's how quick it kind of is to get set up and started. Now I could fiddle for a long time and make sure it's easier to get these fields in, but for now all the training's done. I'm going to send a document through, I'm going to try to train it, I'm going to try to send a second document through, I'm going to try to train that. Now using Datacap Studio here, it doesn't have a verify client, but I can run some of these through using single TIFFs, and then once it gets to verify, drop it into .edit, do the verification and the export and parts of that too. So let's see where we go here. I'm going to get that document. Let's just go get one of them. I'm going to copy it. I've got to put it in the location for my application. So there it is. I'm going to run a batch through here. I'm going to say it's a single TIFF. Say new vScan task. I'm going to do scan single TIFF. Advance. Now it's type other. Okay, they're all come through a type other. Profiler's going to try to go through this. Okay, so let's just keep it running here and go and look at what happened. So it did define it as a main page, which is good, but it probably didn't find a fingerprint or any data. Now what's interesting is you see that account number did come out and find the word Mary, so that's a problem, but it did do what we wanted to do. It found some data on the document, even though it never had a fingerprint here. Okay, so let's go and choose that and look at that piece right there. Let's go look at the log. So here's that log. Now one thing that didn't occur is that there's no text file here for the for the actual OCR. So I'm going to go add that. And I can't remember what the action name is, but I know this UI rule set has a action for doing that. It's called create text file. I'm going to go find where that action is. I'm going to add it. I know that the OCR is done. I think it's done differently in this application, so I'm just going to go find that action. It's in Regex shared. That's an easy way to find things. In Profiler, let's see where this rule ran. It did. Okay, so it ran on main pages, so they did change this application. I can just go and change the settings on this, click on main page. When it does its recognize, I'm going to save the results to a text file and click save. So now that results will be saved to a text file, I can just come back right into Datacap Studio, right in the test tab, and just choose Profiler, run it again, and this time, like I say, keep running. It did the same thing, but this time now when I look in that log file, there's going to be a text file. See right here, team001.txt. I'm going to look at that file. Here's the data on that beneficiary designation form, and you can see that I have social security number here. Now this is just a flat file, and it came down and it went Mary, so it should have come straight down. I'm surprised it didn't come down and try to find the exact line here. That's an error, and not sure what I'm going to do about that right now, but let's just run through this. It looks like it's getting closer, but that's going to be an error, and I'm going to have to add some recognition on that to at least make sure it's a social security number and invalidate it if it's not. For now, it's going to think the word is Mary, and it's going to be pretty happy with it. Let's move this batch forward into verify. I'm going to advance it, and I'm going to put it into pending mode. And I'm going to run my Datacap desktop. Datacap desktop has all the applications here. Choose mine, which is accounts, right here, and see what all the batches are. And there's that batch. I'm going to run it in verify mode, and I'm going to look and see what happened here. So here's my beneficiary designation. I've got my fingerprint class. We're going to add a pull down on here to have our different classes. Just one. Actually, we could just set this because we only have one class of this, and it's going to be called account or beneficiary des. Okay, well, one class for all of these. It's just a variable. Full name. Here's Mary. It got that data over there where it should have been over here. I'm surprised it didn't come straight down, but in general, the user is going to go click on these things and get the full name. Now the full name is 2 words, so I have to go and get 2 of them. So I'm going to rubber band around it. I'm going to do a little longer rubber band, and date of birth. I'm going to zoom in because I can't really see what that says. And social security number. Account number. It does say it got account number. And where did it get that? Oh, it got it from right up there. So it thinks the account number is the social, whereas the account number is really this number here. So I would click on that as an operator. Now we've got the value. Now irrevocable, I've got 2 values here, yes and a no, but I don't know where they're at. So in general, I can at least make this easier for the next guy by choosing this value here. Okay, so I can at least see the snippet, and I can choose yes, no. So this is always going to be manual until we add an extra fingerprint, until we edit the fingerprint and add that capability. And I click submit here. All the fields are done. I'm going to submit the batch. I'm going to say OK. Nothing's going to happen here with that fingerprint until we go through export. There's a default export here. I'm going to go through the default export here and say OK. And now you can see what happened here if I come back to Datacap Studio and I go to the zones here. The zones are refreshing. I've got a whole new category here called beneficiary des because that's what I typed in that field, and I've got a new main page here. Now if I want to create the checkmark capability and do a better job of that, I've now got to go edit the zones here. So let's come back to that. Let's run a new document through and make sure it gets the data. I'll still have to do the checkbox finding manually, but we'll come back to that in a minute. But that's kind of how I go about building the first steps in a learning application. And I can run the next one just straight through Datacap desktop. So I can just say vscan single TIFF. It's going to run through it. I've got my one document there. I can say OK. Say OK. I know I've got a job in profile, so I can run profiler and pick up the next batch. I could have also double clicked on it and say OK, And next thing is I know there's a verify badge because that's where it goes next. You can see that as I ran this document through the second time, it got all the data off. The only thing it didn't get is the irrevocable. We'll have to put a setting in there to make sure that if it's set to blank, like it doesn't have a value, we're going to have to set the status to 0 so it'll actually pop up and verify. Otherwise, this document may have gone straight through. Again, it didn't get the account number. Why is that? We're going to have to come back. So that one probably has some weird rules on it. It's one that's part of that came with the learning application. It must be. But it set it to Mary again. So we're going to have to figure that out. Oh, it didn't use the zone first. It was set. We're going to have to go. We do have to go back through the logs and figure out why it set it back to Mary, because we gave it a zone and it should have used the zone first. So something happened that it dropped out of that first one where it's supposed to use its own zone, and then it went through. So that's an error, but I'll just make sure I choose the correct account number and the irrevocable, and I'll say no, and I'm going to submit this batch. It won't create a new fingerprint unless I chose create a new fingerprint, so it said no. From now on, it's going to use that fingerprint. And if I'm an operator and I say, gosh, this one keeps coming through wrong every time, I'm going to create a new fingerprint and have it come through. But it's working pretty good. Let's do one more document here with different values on it, and we'll do the different layout one, and we'll come through and do that. Actually, let's go look at that log real quick. I'm going to open up that profiler log here and go and try to find out what happened when it didn't choose the right account number. The easiest way to look in the log is to use your account number, or sorry, to use your function names. Oh, we didn't do account number. We did social security number. So social security number was the one I thought. Oh. No. Okay, so there's the error. I put the locate rule. You probably saw that when I was doing it. I put the locate SSN rule on the account number, and that's the problem. So let me change that one back to a generic one, and fix the SSN and move it from a generic one to the SSN one we had. There we go. But it still would have picked up something other than name. So let me go look at that. It's called F fill SSN by zone. So I'm going to just search for that. See where that run and see what happened here. So I can see here's the action running. It's going to say populate the zone by the field, and it found that account number because we set the zone to that. So it did do what was right. Now we're going to set it to the social security number, and then it just said is field filled. It looks like there's some kind of parameter here, and it came back with false because the account number field cannot be located to determine whether it contains data. So I think I have an error in how I called that action. So let's go look at that. Fill zone, yeah, is field filled. So I've got to go look at that and see what this parameter is. I have a feeling it's the name of the field. So yeah, I should have had SSN in there. So my fault, SSN. So oops, I gotta lock it. Come back, put SSN in there, say save, publish rule set, and I'm going to change that zone around a little. It would have been right, but remember I put it under account number and not zone. So date of birth is there, SSN is there, account number is there. So all the zones are right in the right location. So that should populate next time. So let's try that. Let's do a different document on that. Let's go find another, I got the second version of this document. I'm going to copy that to my images folder. And then after this goes, we're going to try one more thing. So this one should just work because it's the same layout as the other one. You'll have many fingerprints for the same document, but in this case I think this one will work. Scan, single, picked up the document, say OK, go through profiler, say OK, and then verify. So again, this one came up with all the right data. Remember, this is a different file, has totally different data in it, but the layout was saved and it got the right data here. Again, the account number's here, but it does have one error here in the OCR. Not an error, it's a confidence issue in the OCR. I can verify it, see it's right. I would have to set the irrevocable to yes or no manually. Let's go and fix that next and just set those zones. This might be hard because I've done the image enhancement on that, and I don't necessarily know what the location looks like, but I'm going to try to do my best here. So I'm going to say submit. I'm going to say OK. I got the data. It's ready for export. I will export it just so it's not in our way from other things. The default export just saves a CSV file somewhere. That's all it does, and you can go through and change that. But it also saves that fingerprint. Let's go do two things. First, let's try to set the zone on that irrevocable, which we did have a bigger zone, but the problem is it didn't have the zones for the OCR. So we need to set the zones for the two fields as well. I can guess where this other X is here. We got an issue where the image enhancement took off the check marks, but this is just something you'll have to deal with. You can go look at the original file as well. I locked it. Let's come down here where it is, and I'm going to put a zone on the, remember yes, I know yes was first, and that X would be here. Okay, and the no would be here. Next thing is I have to make sure, I'm going to click on one of these and I'm going to shift click on the other one. This is something you have to do. Oops, control click on the other one, and I'm going to right click on one of them, and I'm going to say make same size. It'll work a lot better if both of these boxes are the same size. Now those are the zones. You also have to make sure that they fit within the original zone. Okay, and I'm going to make this one a little bit smaller. This is just what the operator chose. Make it fit a little bit better in here. Now we probably should get those check marks off of there. I'm going to unlock that. You can see that now if I open up irrevocable, I can see, let me zoom out a little bit. You can see that I've got the specific zones on these. So that's good. The next step is I want to make sure, I'm going to do a validate on that one as well and make sure that the value isn't equal to 0 and set the status. So I could do that here. I'm going to say is field filled. Well, I'm running out of time, so I'm going to have to leave that for now. But I'm going to run that other document layout and call it, and then come back and do some more work on this as well. We'll do part 2. There's that. Let's pick that one that had a little different layout. It's not that one. It is document 06. This one has a little different layout. 06 here. I'm going to copy that. I'm going to go back over to my application, delete that one. Sometimes this comes through. I may have to set the fingerprint values higher to make sure that it finds that and come back and look at that. But for now, let's just run through this and see what happens. Right click, create a new one, go single TIFFs, click play, profile. So what we're looking for is that it is going to be a main page, because everything's going to be a main page. I'm going to keep running, but I'm looking for the fingerprint class is not set. That means it didn't find the fingerprint. In this case, it didn't find the SSN either, but remember, this is a different document. It doesn't have the word Social Security on it, so we'd have to go through and change that rule around for this document as well, which is something you're going to be training over time. It's going to get a lot better as time goes on. So that's good. It didn't find this document. I'm going to advance it to the verify step. I'm going to put it into pending mode. In general, it's right now. I just wanted to kind of see it go through, but right now it's as if I ran it through vScan and ran it through Profiler, and then it's ready for verify. And there it is. It doesn't have it, and I'm gonna I got to do a pull down on this, but we called it Ben Des. If I do that different, it's not going to be a big problem. It's just I kind of subclassifying them. In this case, in this application, we can probably just hide that field in some way and set it to the same value every time. Until we add more documents, then we might have different layouts as well, or different values there as well. And I've just got to go find the full name here. There it is. That's where it's going to be. I've got to find the date of birth, which is here. I can just click on it here. I've got to find the Social Security number. That's there, and I've got to find the account number. There it is. And I'm going to click, and then I've also got to do this irrevocable thing. I'm going to just, as an operator, I'm going to put it around it, but I've also got to choose yes or no. In this case, no. Now we would have to come back through. This won't be set up right. We'll have to come back through and set that value later. And I think the verify step I'm going to do, you see the 01 here, I'm just going to check to see if it's 00. If it's 00, I want to set its status to -1, so it forces it to go into verify. So now it's done. I got a couple sitting here in export. I'm going to get rid of them. Now, the nice thing about this is once I've gone through these export steps, there's going to be a new fingerprint here. Go check. And we're going to be able to identify that new layout from this as well. So we've got two different fingerprints for two different layouts, and those will be used from now on. So I had my operators doing all of my fingerprint training here. Next steps are to do some more work on that. We'll come back and do that. And then what happens when we start mixing more documents in and having to pre-sort these and have different documents? I'm going to do a precursor application to this to pre-filter these documents into their various types and feed them in. So I'm having one type of document go into this. I could do multiple documents in here as well. I don't know if that's something I'm going to do, but we could talk about some of the strategies around that. So thanks for listening.